What is going on, all of you game collectors, professional and casual out there in the world? I am MegaAmpster. Thank you for checking out this video. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. Good to see you here. Returning viewers, always great to see you here. Thank you for all the support, especially recently. Really appreciate it. We are here to talk about kind of an important topic, I think, right now. It's been hot for a while now, for even years, but we're starting to really kind of transition into a new era of gaming, right? And that is, of course, relating to digital media versus physical media. Now, it's funny because I still buy digital games from time to time, but it really depends on the game. Like some smaller games I'll usually get digitally, but I still collect physical games. I still purchase physical games, especially for the Nintendo Switch, where unlike some other consoles, I don't know about PlayStation. Let me know in the comments below, PlayStation fans, but I know like Xbox doesn't really do it, where with the Switch, the game is still on the cartridge, right? So it's like you still actually get a physical game. You don't need to download usually much stuff, except maybe like a day one patch or something, but the base game should be there on the cartridge for the most part. Some companies opt in and out of certain stuff, but Nintendo's usually pretty good about that, right? For their first party stuff especially. So, it's important to me. I just bought Mario RPG. I just pre-ordered it, the remake, physically. So I'm gonna get the physical for that as well. But anyways, just like, this has been a really hot topic lately, mainly because of the news that has come out over the last month or so about some of these retailers. So for example, here, Warrior64 posted up here on X a month ago, talking about how reportedly Best Buy, the retailer, is going to stop selling physical media, mainly their DVD and 4K Blu-ray stuff. There wasn't like specific mention of games. They just kind of said a lot of physical media in general, mainly the movies and stuff. They've been slowly phasing that out, but this says as soon as end of Q1 2024, in-store and online. So this isn't just like you can't walk into the store and pick it up, you can still, order it online. Like, no, you neither, essentially. So they would just be dropping all those physical details here. If we go into the bit here, Wario64 grabbed this from the Digital Bits, who reported on it a month ago, pretty much saying from multiple sources, Best Buy plans to exit the physical media business for good as soon as end of Q1 2024, which is not very far away at all. That's just 4 months away as of this recording. And like they mentioned here, they've gradually been phasing it out. But yeah, exactly. Like the Best Buy Steelbooks, that was one thing I really started to get into like over the last year. I got a bunch of Steelbooks. John Wick Chapter 4, Sonic Frontiers, I got a Steelbook for there. The Sonic Movie 2 Steelbook, so they have a lot of good Steelbooks there. Now, of course, if they're going to stop selling physical media, they're going to get rid of those. So not only that, though, this was kind of the big one that came out, but then not too long after, Josh Fairhurst, who I guess is I believe he's the CEO. Oh, right there, actually. Right there it says, thank you, X, of Limited Run Games. So if you don't know Limited Run Games, they kind of do like a lot of like revivals of older games. They do a lot of physical media releases. They also tend to take a while to ship some of those out from what I've heard. So I'm a little hesitant to order some stuff from them. But specifically, Josh Shear is saying, I'd expect this trend to continue in 2024. He's heard rumblings that Walmart is dropping out specifically physical Xbox game, which, to be honest, that's fair, because like I mentioned earlier in the video, Xbox games at this point are pretty much just like download discs. Like you really don't have a lot on the disc itself. It's really just an installer that then grabs it from the Microsoft Store, right? So that honestly makes a little more sense. Specifically, he's saying only Xbox games, which is interesting. And I'm sure he would have knowledge of it. I trust his wording there, just because, being the CEO of a company that focuses on physical releases and do partnerships with different retailers, I wouldn't be surprised that he wouldn't have this information known to him here. But yeah, essentially not the best news, especially if you are really into, collecting physical games. And like the main point of this video, I know that was a lot of preliminary stuff, is to kind of talk about why this is a bad thing. Because like, you could really not care. You could buy most of your games digitally already. Like I said, I've done some. I've only really gotten back into physical collecting over the last like 5 years or so. After kind of learning more about the process, right? And about like how, the different accesses that these companies have to physical versus digital games. The main thing is that as consumers, we're just losing options. And less options is almost always a bad thing. Because now these companies, the big publishers, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, they will have more control over your purchases. Because what's going to happen, we've already seen this, we've been in the middle of this transition, but it's going to completely take over relatively soon in the next probably couple of years, where a lot of these games you're only going to be able to buy on these digital storefronts. right? Being the Nintendo eShop, the Microsoft store, the Sony, whatever their store is called, right? Their PlayStation store. And, you also have Steam, which obviously has been massive for a while. So these things have been around for years, but we're losing out on options. We are just losing options, and that's almost always a bad thing. Even if you're not into physical collecting, we are losing options here. You could either buy a game physically or digitally. Like, I like having that option now where, like, for example, I still have not purchased Mario Wonder yet. That's a next year thing of this right there. Too many games coming out this year where, I want to buy that game digitally because I feel like I don't really need that game physically. But something like Mario RPG Remake, I want physical. I debated about that one, physical versus digital a little bit, but ultimately pre-order the physical one. Certain games, especially the bigger games, I like to have physically if I can. I also do buy Xbox games like the discs, but knowingly they don't really do much, but they're really just the download discs like I mentioned earlier. It's just the options are good. We have physical games, we have digital games. Some companies are doing the cloud streaming as an option. Forcing is another thing, and I'm worried that the companies are going to, in like 10, 20 years, are going to force only cloud gaming, and that's going to suck, especially if you don't have a better network infrastructure, at least in the States. But it's just losing options. That's the main thing here. And a big part about losing physical media is, like I mentioned earlier, you lose control over more of your games. Not only can you not share games, companies have already started to crack down on that a little bit, but as far as I'm aware, you can still share Nintendo Switch games, for example. There might be some verification. I know the rewards system with the Switch is what I'm most familiar with. You can, claim the gold points only once, which makes sense. But in terms of sharing the game, I think you're totally allowed to just pop the cartridge into another person's Switch and play the game, as far as I'm aware. Correct me in the comments if I'm wrong on that, though. I haven't done much at all of that. But it's a good option to have that we're losing out on. And one big thing with the digital versus physical is just the fact that these companies they could decide at any point. Because you're just pretty much, when you download a digital game, you're pretty much just getting rights to play that game. You really don't own your digital games. You just have pretty much a license, right? Like some software, a lot of software on the computer does this too. It's the same thing, where you pretty much buy a license to then download that game. And for whatever reason, the company who owns that product could just revoke your access immediately, right? So for example, we saw a couple of examples of these, Switch specific again, just because that's what I'm most familiar with. But if any of you remember, a year and a half ago as of this recording, someone got Advance Wars 1+2 Reboot Camp early. And what happened was, because the game obviously didn't come out until April of 2023, this was a year before. This was shortly after they delayed it and announced the delay, I believe. I think that was the indefinite delay because of the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine. And what happened was someone was able to preload it before the game was available. And so the fact that they were able to preload it right before it got delayed, and they were able to unlock the game on the original release date of, it was April 2022, I believe. And they were able to get it and play it. And so the fact that, they posted screenshots that are obviously not available anymore because Nintendo would have told them to take it down. What happened was this one user got their access revoked from the game, which is totally fair. Nintendo's right, because obviously they delayed the game and this user got the game early. It was not intentional. So totally a valid reason to take it back. But the importance here with this one isn't the fact that, Nintendo was doing whatever it wasn't their right. It's the fact that Nintendo could do it at all. So these big publishers, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, Valve could do it on Steam. They can revoke your access at any point. We've seen games get announced being delisted from storefronts too. It's the similar situation where they can just revoke that. Another big example, and this one was a little more widespread because obviously this one was one user specifically. This was regarding Neo: The World Ends With You, which launched in 2021. What happened is apparently, this is from Kotaku here, Square Enix accidentally leaked it out early, a week ahead of time before the official release. If you pre-ordered it on the Switch, apparently there was a digital license, right? Okay. So essentially what happened was there was a digital download code that came with it, and you could play the game early through that code or something like that, a week early. And this was for pretty much everybody who pre-ordered the game. And what happened was, as you see here, Nintendo have remotely revoked all digital licenses for that game. So notice how Switch Homebrew Tinkerer, Oatmeal Dome, right? Oatmeal Dome, very reputable source on X here. But yeah, it just still doesn't exist. They just removed all notions of this, but we still have these articles to reference. What happened was yeah, so they worded here specifically, revoked all digital licenses. Note that they're not saying, oh, like they uninstalled their digital downloads, because you don't own these digital downloads. You own a license to access that game. But Nintendo here have remotely been able to deactivate all of these users' copies of Neo: The World Ends With You from the Switch. So once again, totally in Nintendo and Square Enix is right. This was on Square Enix for accidentally leaking this early, right? But it's the fact that they're able to pull this stuff off and do it remotely and just remove your access to a game. It's a little concerning to me, because they don't even need to justify a reason. They have full control, where, you know, these companies, who are not your friends, by the way, I just want to get that out of the way. These are big corporations, right? For whatever reason, they could have a legitimate reason. Like, I know there was the situation with Konami and the Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3 HD on the previous generation of consoles, not the Master Collection, the one that came out recently, where I think like the copyright license or something expired on some of the real life war footage, I think it was, that they used in the game, and so they had to revoke all copies of that. I don't know if they put them back up on the store. They delisted it from the store for a bit because of that. And I know that was the thing. So these companies just have more control over the games you play. And then, you know, at one point you could buy like a full price $60, $70 game, and then at some point, you know, these companies could say, oh, you're done, bye. So there goes your money, right? Like, personally, as a gamer, I like to know that, like, when I buy these games, I have full unaltered access, right? With Switch games in particular, you know, the game is on the cartridge. Nintendo delisted it from the store. Like, for example, Super Mario 3D All-Stars, right? Nintendo delisted that game from the store digitally. But if you did pick up a physical cartridge of the game at a retailer, you can still play that. It's not like you can't play that game anymore from your physical cartridge. You can still re-download it too if you bought it on the eShop, but you can no longer purchase it officially now. So it's a scenario of these corporations having more control over their games, which honestly will be good for stuff like, you know, a lot of Switch games when they leak out early is because people get the physical copies early and they like dump the ROM online, right? So this will help control that aspect. So there is some good to it, but at the same time, we're just losing out on options. This is an inevitability. Companies are not going to go back on this. These big publishers are not going to go back. They're going to send full forward all digital, because to them, it saves them money from shipping physical items too, and like having to, you know, produce all the game carts and boxes and cover art, and they don't do manuals anymore, but you know what I mean. They save money, they prevent leaking out. So it's like, for the corporations, it's good, and they have more control over your games. As consumers, we're just losing out on options, really is what it is at the end of the day. And that's not an amazing thing. You know what I mean? It's really, I don't know. It's just losing out on options. I could totally understand if you're full on digital or cloud streaming games, you're like, this means nothing to me, right? But it should still kind of like make you think a little bit about how much control these companies are really trying to have on these games. And, you know, not having an option is just not ideal. You know what I mean? Especially like you don't have a lot of memory on your system, or, you know, other things like that that prevent you from getting the game digitally. It's like, we're losing out on one less option. And as these retailers are stopping to sell these games, I mean, they're not helping the situation, right? But they see the writing on the wall, because, you know, Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, they're gonna eventually slow down. We see releases like Starfield. Did that have a physical release? I don't know if it did. I know I think it did actually. Alan Wake 2 did not. That just straight up was only digital. And that's a high profile, like, AAA game. So all these companies are gonna start to kind of slowly follow this trend. And I feel like Nintendo's gonna be the last final one to really still be doing physical, but even then, I think they're gonna eventually move to only digital. It's inevitable. I think in the next 5 years, I don't know if we'll be 100% digital, but we'll be pretty damn close. Luckily, there are companies around like Limited Run Games, like I Am 8-Bit, some of these stores that actually do their own like exclusive physical releases for games that otherwise wouldn't. Like, for example, I have the physical copy of Ori and the Will of the Wisps. I don't even think that game originally had a physical release. If anybody knows otherwise, let me know in the comments below. But I Am 8-Bit was able to produce the physical version. They were able to work on that and produce it physically. They got the go-ahead from Microsoft to do that. And, you know, Limited Run Games, I mean, we see they're releasing all these super old games. They're releasing Shantae Advance on a physical Game Boy Advance cartridge, supposedly sometime next year. I'm still waiting for pre-orders on that limited run games. I hope it comes soon. Or hope those pre-orders open up soon. But it's just like, we're losing out on so many options. That's really the bummer here. So, I don't know. We'll see. It's an inevitable, you know, we've already been in this transition for years now, and it's inevitable that all physical media for gaming, and I mean, we even see it with streaming services for movies and TV, and with the music industry, like, we have vinyls and stuff that made a comeback. Places still sell CDs. Hopefully vinyl stays. I feel like vinyl will stay just because of the superior audio quality with that. So at least there you still have physical and then streaming options for music, you know? But like, unfortunately, games are slowly getting to that point, and they will. It's inevitable. So it's not like we can course correct this, or it's not like companies will backtrack on their plans here. It's going to be inevitable. It's only good for them. Consumers are already used to mostly digital. You know, we see these trends in physical versus digital sales that are reported from Famitsu and other magazines here, and it's like, yeah, it's just mostly trending all digital, which convenient for sure. And for the corporations that publish these games, like, it's better control for them. But as a consumer, we're just losing out on options, you know? And that's kind of the big bummer, that, like, I'm not trying to convince you to stop buying digital games here. I'm just trying to let you know what the deal is and why, for people who still buy games physically, why this is a big deal. Just at the end of the day, we're losing out on options, and we're losing control of our purchases. And for corporations, that's great. For consumers, that's bad. So what are you gonna do? You know, we're trending in that way. So I'm still gonna try to buy physical games as much as I can, where I can, you know, where I want to specifically buy those. So we'll see what happens. But anyways, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are. Let me know. I'm curious, like, if you do buy physical games still. Are you mostly digital? Have you tried cloud streaming? Because I have not tried that. Definitely let me know in the comments below. I'm super curious, and whether this means anything to you or not. Maybe it doesn't, you know? This is just how I feel. Figured I'd put this video out there. So with that, thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you all on the next video or live stream. Sorry, I'm not releasing any videos on physical media. No CDs, no nothing. You're just gonna have to watch it digitally on YouTube. So until next time, take care.